Hi, and welcome to the Ready for Love podcast with Auret, the dating and relationship advice show dedicated to helping you create a single life you love, date with confidence and ease, and ultimately attract the love of your life. Thank you for listening.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. This is Auret, dating and relationship coach and host of the Ready for Love podcast. I just love every moment of recording these episodes for you, and I really hope you enjoyed listening to them as much as I enjoy making them. So one of the highlights, of course, is to speak to other dating and relationship experts and learn more about what they do. And today I have the honor of welcoming Seán Brickell. Seán is a very accomplished life and dating coach, speaker, author, and media commentator, and the creator of the Life Impact Confidence and Communication Skills Training System to help professional women develop the right practical and psychological skills to enjoy a happily realistic, fulfilling and successful love life. As part of this, Seán's just released the 5-step Professional Women's Dating Success System course. One woman who used just one of the techniques Seán teaches is now married to a man she thought she would never be with. So today, Seán's going to give us an overview of the system, but specifically, we will focus on how to perfect your practical and emotional skill set so you can attract the right men. So thank you so much, Seán, for joining me, and I'm looking forward to hear what you'll be sharing with us today.
Well, Anna, it's great to be here as well, and thank you for that stirring introduction. I like the sound of him already, whoever the Seán Brickell bloke is, but it's great. We've always enjoyed chatting to you, because I know the first time we met you, I thought this is a woman who really cares about what she does, doesn't pretend to care about what she does, to help people find love, genuine love, and not unrealistic love. And it's always great chatting to you. And I think we share many of the same philosophies and beliefs on this. So it's great to be chatting to you.
Thank you. Thanks. That means a lot to me, Seán. Yeah, I think I can remember the first time we spoke, and I had the same thoughts. We do share a lot of our thinking and beliefs and philosophy. So yeah, fantastic. So, the Professional Women's Dating Success System, the course. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about it. How did this come about? What inspired you to do this piece of work specifically?
Over the years that I've met and still know some truly amazing women, women who are happy to strike out into the world on their own and in many cases achieve great things, either professionally or socially or culturally or a combination thereof. But despite all that, no matter how capable, how charming, or even how cute they are, when it comes to love life, it can be a bit of a car crash. And, they turn to me and some become clients, go, Seán, I have all this other stuff that's going on that's good, but it's not happening for me. Why is that? And sometimes it's really obvious, and sometimes maybe not quite so obvious, but invariably, there are certain things that I've noticed over the years, and I believe there are 5 steps to find and then attract the right sort of man for the right relationship that will enhance not just your life as a woman, but also, and this is just as important, the life of the man with whom you can share either a long-term or if not a lifelong relationship. Mm-hmm. And most women, no matter, as I say, how charming or capable or cute they are, only seem to follow steps 3 to 5, and even then, not always so effectively. Mm-hmm. But yet they miss out the crucial first steps. Steps 1 and 2 are, if anything, the most important. And you get those right, and you get those in sync. And what happens in steps 3, 4, and 5 will follow and flow much more naturally, positively, and in an emotional sense, much more profitably and rewardingly. Mm. And that's what I did. I just see these amazing women. I think, my God, you have to be with someone. And this is another thing that we'll be covering in our discussion, is if you want to be with someone, you want to share your life and all the great things you bring to the world, then why aren't you doing it? And I sometimes know why. It's obvious why they're not doing it, for sure. And I think I want to help you. And therefore I've also, and it started because, I spend one of my parts, a key part of my business is I generally go into multinationals and corporates, and I help them win multi-million pound dollar deals, and show them all the practical and psychological confidence and communication skills. And actually the confidence element has become more and more important, because I realized that it doesn't matter what ability you have, without the right attitude, you're not going to apply that ability to therefore achieve what you want. And it applies in your personal and emotional life. And actually what happens in your personal kind of emotional life has a huge impact on your work life and vice versa. But kind of our emotional life is often at the core of our being and our daily existence. And do you feel emotionally enriched in what you're doing, the way you live, or do you feel empty no matter what else you've achieved? And I increasingly, I had, and the story I can maybe share with you, there are two actually. One, I've had so many women over the years. I've gone out for a drink or tea or whatever. It was a group of us, and women I don't know have been pinned me to the wall, and physically, well, not far off. That was an exciting night out. I'm handy. I'm 6'2" and 16 stone. Do you mind? Have a care. And they say, Sean, my girlfriends say this, but with this guy, what does this mean? I go, well, that's rubbish. That's rubbish. This is what it means. And I just tell them straight. And there was no fluff or flummery and nothing like that. And I thought, okay, there's a chance here, an opportunity to, from a man's point of view, but also with all this, there's a lot of science in what I do as well, as based on the setbacks and successes of some women who've achieved, whether they failed previously, but then achieved emotional satisfaction and success and happiness and fulfillment. And that's kind of what we want. Yeah. And there's, I think one of the things that really prompted me to start thinking about how I could put the system together was actually at a business meeting. And what happened was extraordinary. It's never happened before or since. We had a business meeting, this woman and I, in her 40s, very capable, tall, capable, intelligent, dynamic, fun woman. And we had this meeting for about an hour or so, hour and a quarter. It went really well, got the business. And I was just leaving this very sprawny boardroom, and she opened the door. And, she's a tall woman. I'm 6'2", but she's almost as tall as me. And she has a real presence about her. Anyway, she opened the door. And I noticed when she opened the door, she put her head down. I thought, So I was about to leave, and I was a meter and a half from the door, and just as I got to the door, she closed it. Not quite shutting on me, but she said, look, there is actually one other thing. I said, okay, unusual. And she said, well, look, I'm at an age now, I kind of have done a lot with my life, and I'm really pleased with I'm proud of what I've achieved, but I want to spend my life with someone I can have a really great and ideally nourishing, it wasn't quite the word she used, but that's what she meant, nourishing, lifelong relationship. And there's this guy I've known and liked for 20 years. We've kind of been friends, but I know he's the man for me. But he's a bloke's bloke, and he just sees me as a mate. How do I go from the platonic zone to the sort of the sizzling non-platonic zone? And I listened to a few more things she told me about him and them, what they did, and I said, okay. And I gave her one body language technique, which is designed to test a man's subconscious. And if there's potential for him to feel more, then it will actually maybe spark something in him that's different in him and make you as the woman see you in a different light. Anyway, a few weeks later, she called me up and said, Sean, I've got a date with him. We're kind of going on a date. It's not like we're hanging out with mates. We're going on a date. 1.5 years later, they were married. It just changed the way he saw her. Now, there's potential there, but it took this one very simple technique, body language technique, the signal, to bring it out of him. Now, one thing, and I will probably say it again and again, I know to my clients, is it's not about being techniquey. And it's the last thing I want to do to anybody in the world is to make them techniquey, but it's to bring out the natural skills. And that's what my programs, and whether in person or online, are about, is bringing out the natural skills you all have in your personality armory, but either aren't aware of them or don't know how to access them and then apply them to achieve what you want. So
Okay.
Forget the long way down. This is why I do the program I do, because the best result in the world is somebody comes to me, Seán, you've given me the confidence to, one, ask a man out. And there are 3 ways of asking a man out, and main ways, only one of them really works. And, or this is how I feel different. I'm walking different. I'm feeling different. I'm getting more attention, but more attention from the right guys. And that's why I do what I do. You're overcome.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
Thank you. I was going to sit down in a darkened room one day and just drink some green tea to get over that that answer.
Well, you don't just sort of, wake up one day and just do these things all of a sudden. I think a lot of things happen in life and experiences, and this is the kind of work that you do with your heart. And I know that's the way you do it, so it's it happens over time, doesn't it? And everybody that you meet kind of contributes to what you learn and what you know and what you have to offer. So I'm very glad that you're sharing that with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And it's also, it's wonderful to get a man's perspective. My ears certainly picked up even more when you mentioned the ways to actually ask a man out, specifically one. So I wonder if you would be sharing that with us a little bit later.
Happily.
But yeah, so I just want to be very clear, this thing about this, it's not about tactics and techniques and games and rules and all those kind of words, right?
Not at all. It's actually, it's, I mean, we can get onto this. There are certain things you need to do before you even think of looking for a relationship or dating or whatever it might be. And when you've done that, the rest is a lot simpler than it probably is for a lot of people, a lot of women who are looking for love and a proper relationship.
Yeah. So, let's, could you give us an overview of the system, of the course? When you mentioned it's 5 steps, but like I said earlier, for today, we're just really gonna focus on one of those steps. But just for our listeners, just give us an overview of what you're talking about here.
Sure, and there's 5 steps. I mean, the analogy I would use, and having done both paragliding and parachuting, and almost died doing paragliding just over 20 years ago, when the kit wasn't quite as safe as it is now. It's the politest way of putting it. But you wouldn't go and jump off a mountain or a mountain ridge as a paraglider, or jump out of a perfectly good aircraft at 3.5, 4, 5, 10,000 feet if you hadn't done some preparation. And yet that's what most people do when it comes to dating. They think, all right, I'm going to paraglide my way to emotional greatness. And then, they don't know the A line from the B line, the E line, the D line, all the rest of it. And they don't know how to steer. They don't know, they're not sure of the terrain. They're not sure where they're heading. They haven't thought of all the worst case scenarios, the best case scenarios. They don't know what they're capable of physically, psychologically, practically, and therefore, as I say, a lot of people start at step 3, and then I'll explain what step 3 and 4 and 5 are in a second. The first thing you need to do, and the first step, is master your psychological and emotional mindset. That is, it sounds obvious, but it's kind of true. And what I cover in the program is, and the system, is how you do that in a way that works. And there's a lot of science in there as well as based on actual life experience. So it's kind of knowing who you are as a person. If I said to you, if I said to anybody listening, what are your values? And they go, most people already go, what are your top 5 values? And they go, probably more elegantly than that. That's my I'm not sure noise, to give the slightly suspect impersonation.
Oh God,
but then if I said,
recorded now forever.
Damn. Anyway, it's one of my best impersonations I need to work on. But if I then said, what are your top 5 values in order? The vast majority, in my experience, 98 to 99% of people cannot answer that question. And yet that is such an important question you need to be able to answer, because your values are, in effect, your emotional steering mechanism. So you say, well, I'm this sort of person, I like doing this and doing that. But actually, your life doesn't manifest any of those things you say or claim you like doing. Or in terms of, these are people I like being with, and these are my friends. And you think, well, actually, some of these people aren't your friends. And I know with some women, I know with some female friends, so here's my friend. And you look at them, you think, yeah. And if a man Hove's interview who one or both of them liked, the gloves are off. The friendship dissipates very rapidly and can disintegrate and ignore get most unfortunate. Therefore, it's really important you know, for instance, what your values are and also knowing who you are. Often, for instance, emotionally and let's look socially and emotionally, people live, and it happens in their work life, but also particularly in their emotional life, they live as their false self, not their true self. And the false self is invariably the person you think you ought to be, depending on who you're talking to or who you're hoping to attract. Well, that's not going to attract the right person because you're out of sync with who you are, and therefore their perception of you, unless they're very perceptive and wise, will be out of sync with who you are.
Yeah.
So who do you want to attract? The person who misinterprets who you are, or the person who kind of gets it? Okay, this is who you are, good, bad, and bizarre, but this is who you really are. And something I mention often, the greatest weapon we have in our personality is naturalness. So it's being yourself and not being afraid to be yourself and being truly accepting of all the brilliant, the bizarre, even beastly aspects of your character. So mastering your psychological emotional mindset is really important.
Yeah.
The second one, which we're talking about in more detail today, is then perfecting your practical and emotional and social skill set. These are some of the practical elements that are really important. So the 10 love life-shaping questions you need to ask before looking for a potential partner. And these are very thought-provoking, and I'll come back to that in a second. Plus, understanding dealing successfully with 6 different types of men you're going to come across and what their plus and minus points are, at least their main ones.
Right.
And a program I developed called Developing Your Emotional Early Warning System. So this saves you the heartache, getting involved with a man who, no matter how charming and charismatic he may be, there are certain practical and physical, even psychological signs you can unwittingly give off, some of them subtle, some of them not so subtle. And it's being aware of what those are as well. So all these, so you kind of understand what you're dealing with as well. And also one of my favorite topics, and I'm definitely going to talk about this, is making the right choice from your emotional life's menu. And as a woman, you have 3 choices. Not 2, not 1, but 3. And I'll explain what those are. And that's really, really important. And particularly for women, because men have a similar menu, but we don't get hung up on it. And there aren't the same social or sociological pressures and perceptions involved with it. But I'll tell you more on. The third step is how to, as I put it, how to sparkle, sizzle, and stand out in a social arena. And you don't need to be an extrovert to do that. I know you're an introvert, a serial introvert, and I'm actually a bit of both an introvert and an extrovert, or ambivert as I like calling them. But and so it's how you have impact when you're out socially. So you draw people to you.
Yeah.
You know, you don't sell yourself per se. You allow people to buy into you. There's a subtle but significant difference. You don't sell yourself, but you allow people to buy into you. So. And elements here of, 3 ways to have conversations when you hearts, minds, and dates. One of the lessons, as well as understanding a man's body language, both when he's not so into you, of course, when he is into you. And there's certain signs he gives off, invariably unwittingly. And also how you have developed the power and poise to become even more attractive. And this is down to the way you walk. And I've got to say, too many people, not just women, but men, walk really badly. And it's very noticeable.
That's a very overlooked point.
But it's kind of
something you think about often, is it?
It isn't. And actually, men are particularly visual. So you could be as clever, as charming, as comedic, and cute as could be. But if you walk like a hod carrier with hemorrhoids, it's not going to work. It's not a good look.
Oh, gosh, I can't see that in my mind right now.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Particularly if you're wearing heels, and I've never cross-dressed, so I would never know. But I can imagine it's not easy. But it doesn't matter what you're wearing, your walk is really important. And there's been a lot of scientific research done on this. And there's a walk which has been developed called the walk. And there's one particular walk women do. And there's a sort of technique. And it's inherently natural to you in a way it isn't to we men. But a lot of women don't do it. You can overdo it, but you can underdo it. And in the program, I go into that as well. So it's all about the practical, the physical, and the physiological and psychological. And then the fourth part, or the fourth step, I should say, is being how to be a delectable date. And this is about, and often, some women like the man to ask them out on the date and suggest it and where they're going to go. And so you arrange it, and they just put their feet up and, and then wait for the call, email, the details. But you can have some control on that. And actually, I think it's nice if a woman is elegantly and warmly proactive in that regard. And there are certain places you can go that you can suggest will be very different. That's one thing. But also how to start, shape and steer conversations that with men that reveal them and inspire them and attract them. And there are 14 questions with some sub-questions that I've devised that will, you may not, if you get through all 14 in an evening, you're talking to the most monosyllabic man ever to walk the earth. I guarantee sometimes you may only need to ask one or two of these questions, 3, 4 tops, and it inspires the most amazing conversation. You just can't get enough.
Right.
So that's really important. And most people, when it comes to communicating and certainly talking, are very passive and they're not proactive. Mm-hmm. And I know some women will be listening, hang on a second, men, when they ask me out, we go out, even we're meeting up socially, but not on a date. They will yabba, 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 yabba. I thought we women at men, sort of speak 7,000 words a day, men 2,000 words a day, but it's almost in reverse on a date. And that's why, because men like to take control sometimes and feel obliged to talk. And sometimes it's nerves and sometimes it's narcissism or somewhere in between. And they maybe talk too much and don't ask enough questions. But there are ways of dealing with that as well. So you get something out of them, but also they reveal who they really are. And you get to the core, the essence of them more easily. And finally, the 5th step is how you start. Once you got to a stage where actually you quite like each other, or you like each other a lot, and you see there's potential, that's a key word there, potential, how you start creating a fulfilling emotional future. And there's the 2 parts. There's one lesson. It's what I call avoiding the emotional aspiration time bomb that can destroy any relationship before it's begun. And it's something, I'm afraid, I've experienced it, it's detonated, and I've escaped reasonably, certainly in the medium long term, unscathed. But the emotional aspiration time bomb is something that so many, from a man's point of view, and forgive me for being honest, and I know some men don't help themselves, but say from one man's point of view, women set up, sometimes unwittingly, or even they can't control it. And they create this bomb, this time bomb, emotional aspiration time bomb, and it's just a matter of when it goes off, and they create problems for themselves. And then the final part is how you start building the 4 pillars of your realistically successful long-term relationship. There are 4 pillars, I believe, to a successful long-term relationship. And there are key elements within those. See, characteristics come constituent parts that you need to measure yourselves on. There's a sort of measurement scale and process in that, which is a part of the program as well. And whether you're in a relationship or want to be in a serious relationship, you can analyze kind of where you are on that and where the person you want to be with could be on that as well. And it's really, really important. So those are the 5 steps.
Gosh, that sounds very, very comprehensive. It sounds like quite a journey, actually. It's not just kind of steps, but it really sounds like a very individual, personal journey that each person goes on.
Oh, very much so. And it's very important because there's a chance to assess yourself as well. And it's really important. You think, actually, how am I progressing? Rather than doing it, you need some tangible feedback about the tangible and intangible elements and experiences. And that's really important. And as I say, the thing I care about, I don't mind if somebody calls me up at 11 o'clock at night within reason. At least not during the international rugby. That's just not on. I won't take the call. But or maybe in the middle of afternoon tea at a push because I love my cakes. But if they say, look, here I am, what do I do? Well, I invested in this program. I've done this step. I've done this. How do I deal with X, Y, Z? And if it then leads to a little change, and sometimes it's not about necessarily doing massive changes. The woman I talked about earlier, Sylvia, she just did one thing.
Yeah.
One simple but significant thing. And she was proactive. She wasn't passive. And hey, you all know this, I'm sure with your clients, you could say to them, right, this is your situation. These are the challenges. This is what you want to achieve. This is how you get there. But it's the first 2 bits are relatively easy to work out. And so it's the third part, but the third part is not necessarily the easiest to do because you can't push them, you can't physically force them to go and take action.
Sure. Yeah.
And that it's sometimes you only have to. This is something was one of my the phrase I came up with, and it's kind of a central philosophy to everything I do. it is this. Is sometimes you only have to dare a little to achieve even greater rewards.
Mm-hmm.
Often, and people think you have to achieve great things, dare hugely to achieve even the smallest reward. And sometimes you don't have to achieve that or dare that much to try and achieve what's important to you. But you've got to know what's important to you, and you've got to know what sort of person you are and what you want to achieve. And in terms of dating, you've got to ask yourself, one of the things in terms of perfecting your practical emotional social skill set is kind of, what do you want? What do you want right now? What's the relationship do you want? And there are three. Are you happy, Liza, to talk about this now and then? Or
Totally. I think. Well, thank you for giving us the overview. So just so we're clear with our listeners, we're going to focus on a specific part on perfecting your practical emotional skill set going forward. Is that okay with you?
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, I can't wait to hear all about it. So,
okay, just to give you some, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but just to give you a sample.
Yeah.
One of the key things you need to do in terms of the practical bit is you need to make the right choice from your emotional life's menu. Think, well, what's on my menu? You have three choices.
Okay.
Do you want a snack? Metaphorically speaking, you a snacker? Do you want a gourmet meal? Or do you want an open plan diet emotionally? And otherwise. So let me describe it. A snacker is a typical snacker, somebody who maybe just come out of a relationship or is just not in the mood for a relationship, and they still want some intimacy, emotional and or physical. So they snack on the odd date. It might lead to a bit of grappling or something a bit more vigorous and memorable, involving nakedness and even a bit of sweatiness. They'll have maybe a couple of lovers or not necessarily at the same time, but that's a whole new ball game, different course, I'm sure. And I think, men have no problem doing that. But I think that, a lot of women do, and I hope decreasingly, because there's this, which you're very aware of, this sociological perception that if you're a woman who has, more than one lover, or you have a few lovers, certainly in the short space of time, you are all sorts of unflattering terms. You're called a slag, a slapper, and slut, and all these terrible, offensive terms. And yet men are called studs. And I'm not politically correct, but it is unfair. But do you know what? There are female friends of mine, one or two female friends of mine, they're very capable, bright, charming, they have everything going for them. And they've gone through phases in their lives, and they've had a series of lovers, and they've snacked, as it were, metaphorically speaking. But you know what? What makes the difference is they kind of, in the nicest, most elegant way, don't care what people think. They said, look, it was right for me. This is why I did it. This is why I felt that way, and this is what I got out of it. And this is what the other person got out of it as well. And it wasn't being completely selfish, but I was very honest with them. And actually, as a man, you respect a woman more for knowing who she is and what she wants, not just emotionally, but physically, sexually, generally. And actually, it attracted, in both their cases, they attracted a lot more men than a lot of other women. Even when they were saying, I'm not interested, I want a relationship now, they still attracted just as many men, whether they were going through the snacking phase or they wanted the gourmet meal. And so with the gourmet meal, for instance, this is where you want the sort of a 5-course special, the proper, nourishing, nurturing, life-enhancing, long-term, lifelong relationship. You want something substantial, that's serious, that's fulfilling. And if you're ready for that, then so be it. The open plan diet is sort of a halfway house almost between snacking and the gourmet relationship. For instance, you might decide you want you want a gourmet meal, and you end up with someone you think is a gourmet meal. Actually, they're a fast food flop in the broadest metaphorical sense. But then you think, well, actually, I feel like snacking. I don't feel like a relationship, because I'm just not ready for it for whatever reason, valid or invalid. And you meet a man you think is going to be a co-snacker, as it were, who also wants to snack. But actually, he turns into a gourmet meal. And it's being open to that as well. And at the core of this, and the time, even the capable, really amazing women who say to me, yeah, well, he's going so well. Now I haven't heard from him for a week or two. He seems to have gone cold on me. I went, right. And forgive me for being so direct, both to them and to you. And I say, how long have you known him? They say, it's, like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And I say, right. So you slept with him in the first 2 meetings? Well, yeah. I went, right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, doesn't matter how good or bad it was for him and or you, you've engaged him physically and sexually, but you haven't engaged him emotionally and spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean spiritually in the broadest sense.
Yeah.
Because men, we're hardwired from sort of dinosaur times to hunt. And not just dinosaurs, but also women to, feather our emotional, physical, and practical nest, as it were, and to, spread our genes and everything else. And I think an element of the difference is that they're not only dinosaurs, and we're slightly better dressed. So in some cases, the manners haven't improved, perhaps, with some men. So I apologise on behalf of all men for that to women, but. And therefore, it's very easy for a man a lot of men can deal with physical intimacy and sexual intimacy much more easily in the immediate to short term than a lot of women. So if you engage him emotionally and spiritually, as in he likes who you are as a person because he kind of gets you as a person and you're not afraid to be that natural, true you, then it's going to help sustain the physical and sexual intimacy you have. Yeah. But that needs a bit of time. I'm not saying have like a 3-month rule. That's ridiculous. Yeah. It depends on logistics, on all sorts of things. So it's not forcing these things. But the main thing is with the emotional life menu is deciding what's right for you at that point. And say, for instance, and the most out of the three, the two most controversial ones are the open plan, diet, and snacking. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a one-night stand or a 1-week romance or whatever you want to call it, or burst or purple patch, whatever you call it. It's not to beat yourself up about it. As long as you've worked out what is right for you at that particular point in your life. Mm-hmm. If it helps. And if you want a gourmet relationship, the full gourmet proper relationship, then you need to be aware of why you're doing that. And that's why you need to ask yourself some really important love life shaping questions about what you're really looking for. Mm-hmm. These include, for instance, ask yourself, this is putting it very simplistically, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of being in a long-term, if not lifelong relationship with the same constant man? What's good about it? What isn't good about it? And you need to be honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're not honest with yourself at any point in this process, and as you know so well, then you're defeating yourself and you're undermining what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. And, I know I've had some brilliant experiences. I've had some 2 bizarre ones. I've had 1, 2 beastly ones. And one of the reasons I think I became a lot wiser was after I was married before to an amazing woman. And one of the reasons I was attracted to her is she was very intelligently capable. And she had a first in engineering from Cambridge. She had Harvard Business School MBA. I love women like that, and she's very independent. She's sort of sporty and made me laugh. Thought brilliant. As it turned out, we weren't destined to be. I wasn't the right man for her, and she wasn't the right capable woman for me. And we parted company, and it's all been amicable now. It was very difficult at the time for both of us. But in that situation, because, I put marriage as, and I think a lot of people do, and forgive me for mentioning this, but it's kind of important. And I want to understand why one of the reasons that's further inspired me to create this course and to help the clients I do and the people I do, because it's given me greater insights. But when you've been through something like that, and I know some of the people listening will understand that, you need courage. And there are various ingredients of courage. Resilience is very important, but the 2 most important as I define them are courage and action, namely having the courage to take the action you need to achieve what you want to. Mm-hmm. So in that situation, it goes seriously wrong because you put marriage, I think a lot of people, marriage, they put it as a sort of a primary emotional function of their lives. Big mistake. It should be secondary, if not tertiary. The primary hope, let's call it that, not come function, but hope of your emotional life should be to find someone, if this is right for you and for the person with whom you can have this sort of relationship, to find someone with whom you can share a lifelong, a really true, nourishing, happy, fulfilling, and realistic lifelong, if not long-term relationship. And if you then decide to get married after 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years, then so be it. If not at all, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But it's doing what's right for both of you. And when things go wrong, and you have to ask yourself some very difficult, delicate, and damning questions, to which you rarely get some very difficult, delicate, and damning answers. And I had to do that. And I learned a lot from that. It was a very hard process, not just asking the questions that happened before, but even afterwards. But you know what? It was one of the best things that happened to me, because I feel more emotionally reconciled to who I am. I feel wiser. And that situation, sadly, some people have become very wary and bitter and weary. And far too many people do that in my experience. And I'm not sure if you've had similar experience when things have gone wrong for people. But actually, if you're brave enough, you develop wisdom, because you ask yourself these questions. And it's not as it's all them. Sometimes it might be mostly them or even all them, but there will be an element of it that, if not a very large element, that could well be you. But
I'm just thinking about what you said, and I went through my own divorce in my mid-30s, and I got married when I was 30. I was married for about 4 years or so. So I really thought that I had myself figured out. I didn't get married at 18. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I was very competent and confident overall in other areas of my life. And in many ways, I was the woman that you are describing. I still am, the professional, successful, confident, competent woman. And I thought I was doing the right thing, and this was going to be forever. And I had no idea until after my divorce how I just kind of bumbled through dating and relationships, and I just had no idea. I had no idea how little I knew of myself until I went through that process and asking these questions that you are referring to. And it was actually quite a shock to me, to be honest, to realize how almost unconscious I was about my internal emotional life, even though I'm a very emotionally attuned and in tune person, because that's just who I am. But when it came to myself and the choices that I made relationship-wise, I don't know what happened to that. It just, and I see that a lot as well. Sometimes it takes a huge amount of hurt and heartbreak to get to the point where we come face to face with our stuff and start asking these questions and get the answers that steer us in a different way. Yeah.
And the stuff like this, it's really difficult, isn't it? And it takes courage. But when you do it, once you process the painful bit, but if you don't, it's like having, a splint or something under your skin. You think, I don't want to face it or deal with it. And then it festers, it gets worse, and it leads to something more serious. And maybe develops a full-time, a lifelong scar. Yeah. It's the same emotionally. And, it's giving people courage. And that's why I want to give them courage. They dare a little to achieve greatly.
Yeah.
And that's often what you only have to do, is to dare a little. And part of that daring is being honest with yourself, and not blaming everything. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what the people, those listening to you, doesn't matter what someone does to you or tries to do to you or says to you or how they act. It's how you, deal with it or not deal with it, and how you think and how you proceed. It's, if you're clear on who you are and what you're about and what you have to offer and in life, then you're, something emotionally or generally, it doesn't matter what people do. You have your mission, you have your purpose, you have your path. And you may get some debris on that path, you just clear it out of the way and you carry on, but at least you know where you're going. Whereas around you, there'll be a lot of people who, metaphorically speaking, are sort of staggering around with different paths, zigzagging and not knowing where they're going.
Yeah.
And kind of leave them to it. But there will be good people there who are on the same path as you, with whom you can form a great friendship, come relationship. And that's really important. And people who've been wise have also had the courage, and I think if you've faced up to these, I think probably the vast majority of people, certainly over the age of 30, have had a challenging or really awful emotional experience and made them feel it's scarred you for life, and yet, well, actually, it hasn't. And if you let it scar you, it will only scar if you haven't dealt with that wound, and very, very simply. So, and thank you for sharing that story as well. I know you told me something similar when we've talked before, and you've obviously developed great wisdom since, and it makes you even more capable of doing what you're doing now for your clients.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. I think for many people who get through that kind of experience, it's kind of the making and the breaking of your future relationship life. And I just, I had no idea that I could be this happy again now, now that I'm married again, all those years later, and that whole journey. And in a way, that was the best and the worst thing that has ever happened to me. But, it did set me on a path to get to this point. And I'm just, but you have to do the work. And I think this is part of your message as well. These things don't just happen. At some point, you have to stop and do the work. And that is what your system is helping people do in a kind of structured way, almost. Yeah. It is taking that time out for yourself and doing the work.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yes. And asking the questions is part of doing that work, right?
Yeah.
So what other questions have you got for us?
Well, there could be, for instance, a question of, one of the questions is, what are the top 10 benefits of being happily single that appeal to you, and write them down. And this could be very revealing. You think, because often I think people think, I want to be in a relationship. You think, well, I've done everything. I'd like to share my life with someone. But actually, there's something that isn't quite, I don't know, they make excuses for, well, I can't be bothered. It's Friday night. I want to stay and watch, this show, or, do my nails, or, do this, or just read a good book, or just eat a whole box of chocolates. Or just, go and meet some friends at the pub and think, well, why is that? And I think sometimes you need to be very honest with yourself, and actually, no matter what age or stage you're at, you'll be capable of having a gourmet meal and enjoying a gourmet relationship. You're just not quite ready, even though you don't want a snack, or even though you don't want an open plan diet, emotionally or metaphorically speaking, I should say. You actually like being single because you're happy in yourself. And the irony of being happy in yourself is you're much more likely to attract the sort of people you want. It's always the way. When you just feel happy-go-lucky, if someone has that brittle, bitter, or baffled look, thinking, oh, God, they really want a relationship, you're not attracted no matter how physically attractive they may be. And here's another thing. You can be stunningly beautiful and have the most perfect limbs, but not be sexy. You can be anything but physically perfect. And even be overweight and not have great hair and not have great skin or face or eyes or whatever, and yet you can be trouser-shakingly sexy.
Yeah.
And that is down to attitude. It really is, because your appearance can get you interest, but it's your attitude that will help sustain that interest. And so, look why, you happen being single, and what are the things that look at what you write down. And also one of the questions is, how responsible do you want to be, or think you can be, in making your emotional relationship successful in the long term, whatever happens with your partner, no matter what challenges you might face along the way. And you have to think that things could happen. What happens, for instance, if your partner either left you or died or ran off with another woman or man, or both, or a badger called Gervais, which has confused everybody, including the badger, for having such a silly name, that long being chased by some strange man. What happens if he became, or they became, medically incapacitated or psychologically incapacitated in some way? Or, you lost your job, something bad happened to you, you became incapacitated psychologically or physically, or both. You felt tempted to be led astray. You want to go and join a nunnery, or whatever it might be. You lost your job, you lost your home. What would happen then? Could you still be with that person? How would you deal with that? And it's not about being pessimistic. It's about being realistic. We don't live in a utopian world. Elements of our life can at times be like a utopia, this sort of general nirvana, but it's not always the case, and often it could be the complete opposite, as well as various shades in between. So it's looking at all the best, the most beastly, as well as the bizarre things that can happen to you, either challenges you have to encounter, or deal with, or you create yourself, wittingly or unwittingly. And you need to look at all those things. What if, when I get older and saggy and grayer and he does or they do, whatever it might be, then how am I going to feel about them and me and vice versa? How do you deal with that? What's going to keep me going? What's going to keep us going? These are just some of the questions or different elements you need to think about. And
you're suggesting you do, these questions are all great questions when you're in a relationship already.
Even before.
When you think about commitment, but you're suggesting that these are the questions you need to ask as a single person.
Both, yeah. Both in a relationship and particularly beforehand. But especially beforehand, because the more knowledge you have, and when you've processed it all, the more at ease, the more reconciled you will be to who you really are.
Yeah.
There's certain things, for instance, I know what sort of things I like and I don't like. And, for instance, I hate cigarette smokers on site. I detest them. I think they should all be jailed and stuck in a big pit somewhere. Those are some of my favourite people smoke, but I couldn't go out with smoke. That's a practical thing. But also I know too that as much as I'm an extrovert, I love to have a little bit of cheeky chat and banter and laughter. I also love being on my own. And I couldn't go out with someone, for instance, who always wants to party and be always up there. I want some light and shade in them as much as me. It's to me, kindness is very, very important. Somebody who's kind, but also feminine. And, I have a partner at the moment who is those and many more things. And, that's really important. And, but also someone with whom, as a man and as a private man, who's brought up to be a man's man and not sure what means to be strong, I want someone I can actually, and this is really hard, to be vulnerable with. Mm-hmm. And one of the hardest things for any man to do is to be vulnerable. And actually Dr. Brené Brown, psychologist in the US, at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work, she's written this book, very good book, called Daring Greatly, How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. Yeah. And she says, no relationship can survive without vulnerability. And vulnerability is the glue that holds relationships together. There's a lot of research on this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of men are afraid to be vulnerable. And that's, so for a man, not many men would necessarily admit that, if not themselves, but certainly not publicly, because it shows a sign of being vulnerable. Yeah. But it's really important. For instance, I can have those vulnerable moments where I can think, I don't feel so capable or strong mentally or, in whatever way, right at this moment. And it's very hard to say, well, actually, I'm not sure I've got this. Mm-hmm. Every now and then you need to be able to do that. And that for me is really important. I don't want someone saying, well, that's rubbish. You're not a real man, not this, not that, because that will just close a man up, close me up. So, that's kind of important to me. And so many things one could talk about, but it's worth examining these things and being truthful. I'm sure we could all say, I'm brilliant at this, that, blah, 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 but actually what's bizarre about you? What's not so good? I'm probably a bit of a control freak. I like everything really clean and tidy and, I hate mess and, I'm not a great cook. Philip is a wonderful cook. But I'm washing up and tidying up. I second to none. That's my thing, and sometimes, I just got to say, Sean, just chill out. I'm not manic, but, I like things to be neat and tidy and clean and hygienic and all the rest of it. I just, don't like too much clutter in my life. So, can it sometimes drive a partner mad? Maybe. So it's being aware of those little things as well as more significant things.
Yeah, I think the small things matter just as much as the big things. Yeah, definitely. So, do we have any more questions you can suggest?
Oh, God, there are ones I've asked. So, for instance, obviously the top 10 reasons why you really want a long-term or lifelong relationship with a man. Another one is what most appeals to you about being in such a relationship. So, is it emotional security? Is it financial security? Is it psychological support? Is it physical support? Is it support for your career or business, or being able to share all or some of the good, bad, and bizarre life experiences? Is it someone to be entertained by and/or to entertain? Is it someone to share your secrets and private thoughts with? Is it important to you to be able to do that? Is it because it's cathartic, or is it because it's a form of counselling? There's a difference. Is it because you want to be with someone who can inspire you or maybe whom you can inspire, or do you just want to be inspired by someone? You're not into inspiring yourself. And it's because you want someone to help make your life more of an adventure and share in that adventure. Because, this phrase, I'm sure so many people have heard it, they know it. Oh, yeah, when are you going to settle down? I don't like that phrase. It is a rubbish phrase. It should be taken out of all dictionaries, certainly emotional lexicons, because it suggests that if you get involved with someone in a proper relationship, whether marriage or cohabiting, that your life kind of pace of it, the joy of it, it just settles down. It just becomes dull. You might as well watch paint dry with wedding rings on. And it's not about that. Life should be an adventure. The difference is you continue that adventure, albeit with someone who has a mutual interest in that adventure with you and likes sharing it with you.
Yeah. It's anything but settling. It is a very unfortunate phrase. I completely agree. Yeah,
there's someone who's come up with that, and who's probably sitting smug if they're still alive, thinking, I came up with that phrase. And I'm thinking, you're fired. Should be deported. Outrageous.
Seán, can I ask you, would you mind if we make these questions available on the blog for people to actually read through them?
Sure.
As well, just so we can have a full, because it's quite a lot to recap, and I just think it's so amazing. I just want to make sure we capture everything. Would that be all right with you?
That'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. I just wonder if you think about the women that you work with in terms of, the professional, successful, smart women, and something that I often hear, and I just want to get your take on this. What would you say to women who say that they feel that men are intimidated by their success and their achievements and their independence? What would you say?
Change the men you talk to. And I would say, there is, an interesting one. I think it depends on how the woman comes across. A woman can be very capable and achieve a lot, but not shout about it. But there's some women who, particularly in a work environment, depending on the nature of that work environment or even social environment, who can be pretty strident. And there's some of the very active alpha females. And I think men generally, we know how men work. And, we know how to sort of deal with men different ways, and we kind of know where we stand. But I think men sometimes struggle with certainly alpha women, and certainly very capable women, and it's mainly the curse of Generation X, which is probably the vast majority of people listening. Generation X, anybody performed between the early mid-1960s and early mid-1980s. So because the generation with the baby boomers before and the interwar babies before them, there were more clearly defined roles. And most married couples in Western cultures, about 65-70% of women stayed at home and looked after the home and or the family, and the men went out to work, to pay for it all. And that's kind of how it works. Whereas now you have women having careers and having much greater independence. Thank God, because it makes you even more interesting in a job or company. But it unnerves a lot of men, not all men, but it still unnerves men. And men think, okay, we're trying to be men, but we have to factor in women now into not just our emotional lives, but also our work lives. And men feel, there's been a lot of pressure on men not to be too sexist. And a lot of guys don't know kind of how to be a man. They're not quite sure what the definitions anymore. And then they have a woman who's very capable, and they have to compete with women, and with women, the woman might actually be better than them and get the job that they were going for that they might otherwise have got years or decades ago, and even earn more than them. And it can feel very unsettling, but also confusing, and ultimately for some men emasculating. And I know my grandmother told me this, and I've never forgotten it. And she said, a simple life philosophy. She said this: never make a woman feel plain, and never make a man look stupid. And that's obviously in the case of the latter to do with male pride. And so some men are struggling, but it's getting better. It'll get easier for millennials and subsequent generations, because equality will seem more naturally equal. So I think the first thing that women need to, who are like working women I come across, and any listening who feel that is their situation, men feel intimidated. One, they've got to look at the men they're dealing with. Second, which is importantly, before they do anything, how do I come across, and how do I really come across? You can be charmingly capable, and talented and successful, whether professionally, socially, culturally, financially, or in other ways, but not act as if you are. Not mean dumbing it down, but you're just more at ease with yourself. You're just quietly at peace and happy with who you are.
Mm-hmm.
My partner Philippa, I first met her. I thought she's clever and bright and very modest, but very talented. And she's a trained rescue diver, scuba diver. She's a yacht master. Lived and worked in 9 countries around the world. Speaks 3 languages. Was learning 4th, which is Arabic. Worked in the city. Did this, did that. She's set up businesses in unusual places, and she's travelled all over the world. And the most modest person.
Yeah.
And yet I found that very becoming. But some women, I think, particularly when they have to compete against men, and men who kind of push back against them in the workplace and elsewhere, actually they create this friction. And there are ways of being capable but still feminine. And I think I've met certainly a lot of British professional women or professional women in this country who feel that strength and femininity are mutually exclusive. They are not. You can still be strong, but still be feminine with it, or the other way around.
Yeah. I think that is a completely different podcast on its own. That is absolutely one of my favorite subjects as well. Is the whole interplay as well between masculine and feminine, and how we use that. So yeah, and it's something you come across a lot as well.
It is, and but it's. I encourage whether some women I kind of socially who sometimes talked. It's bizarre. I had a series of mainly American women. Forgive me, I'm sure not all are like this. I know not all are like this, and came up to me and they said, you. And they said, "What is it with you English guys?" They meant British. What is it with you English guys? You've always got a drink before you can ask me out. Because you feel intimidated by me. And I listened to it a bit longer, and one was quite charming, the other was anything but charming. And I thought, in the case of the latter, I thought, I don't drink alcohol because I don't like the taste. Give me chocolate cake and tea anytime, but not alcohol. And I thought, even I would drink if I had to deal with you, because you're just not a nice, warm person. And there may be something more fundamental in there, but I think you can still be capable, but be so in a charming way, and you don't have to shout about it. The more you shout, somebody shouts about something. It applies to men as well. My father taught me as a boy, the big man that has the big mouth. The big person doesn't have the big mouth. You don't need to. You can still be capable, but being aware of who you're dealing with, and part of communication, part of relationships, and attracting relationships, let alone being in one, is about how you relate to the other person. It's how you make the other person feel. And the more comfortable you are with yourself and your achievements, the more you focus on them, make them feel good. So when they do hear about, certainly men hear through whatever modest means about your achievements as a woman, not just you have a list and say, look, here they are, be impressed, let's go, people. How they hear maybe through other people, or because it sneaks out in conversation, they'll be able to deal with it more easily because you focused on them and made them feel good and beef them up. We men want to feel validated. We're very proud creatures, so we don't want to feel that you're kind of doing what we need to feel, as in you're being all proud and sort of puffing at your chest and being peacock-esque in whatever way, either directly or indirectly. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Pleasure.
We're gonna be wrapping up soon. I can't believe a whole hour has just flown by. But a question that I love to ask, and if I can ask you, Seán, is what's your definition of love?
My definition of love is this. You've got to be realistically happy to be happily realistic in a relationship. That's the first thing. So love is about being kind, about being accepting and encouraging. It's not a constant, and it can ebb and flow, and it is imperfect. But it should overall be life-enhancing and energizing, not just for you, but the person with whom you're sharing a relationship.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I just love asking that question, because it just reminds me of the whole uniqueness of it, even though, we might use the same words now and then, but it's just one of the most wonderful journeys we can go on in our lives. in it. And it's just so special. So before we wrap up, any parting words of advice on what is your ultimate top relationship? Not necessarily dating as such, but relationship top tip.
Without even thinking about it, I have thought about it, obviously, but above all others, it's communication. But I define that as kind communication. It is I always used to say that stand-up comedy was the ultimate communication challenge, following the close second by talking to the media and then giving business presentations. I've changed that in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Communication in a marriage or relationship is the most challenging, because comedy, you can, even if you die on your ass, on your feet, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, doesn't matter. It's over.
Yeah.
When you're in a relationship, it is 24/7 and has not just short, but also medium and long-term consequences. So communication, kind, honest, helpful communication is the best thing you can do, whether you're dating or in a relationship, period. Simple as that. Kind communication.
Love it. Love it. And you're absolutely so right. It is 24/7. It's not something you can ever take your eye off the ball with. Yeah.
Not at all.
No. Well, thank you so much, Seán. That was just brilliant.
Pleasure. Thanks.
What a way to spend an hour. I love it. So tell me, what's new and exciting? What are you working on?
Well,
apart from your fantastic course that's happening at the moment.
Indeed, and it's live. I'll be doing some webinars on that, live interactive, so online interactive training sessions over the coming weeks and months. So please look out for that as well. Yeah. And there's something actually I do have for those listening. Is a free program actually, and it's the emotional early warning system. So these are the signs you should look for when you come across men who show an interest in you and you think there might be potential. And this is to find out whether they're your knight in shining armor or something quite different. And you should politely sidestep and steer clear of. And it just saves you all the heartache of dating the wrong type of man, because the older you get, the less time you have, the less time you want to waste, ideally no time at all, in just getting to know someone who you hope might have potential. And certainly in the sort of lustrous mists of emotion, when you meet someone you quite like, or there's a spark there, you can sometimes it's very hard to be objective. And therefore it's just a way of bringing you back down to earth, not in a negative way, but just say, okay, is this person, is he too good to be true? If he is, then this system, emotional early warning system, will help figure that out for you. And if he's right, then on you go.
Fantastic.
So yeah, there's that, and there should be you have a link, and I'm not sure you're putting a link out. So that's something that I'd love to give to your to your listeners and to enjoy it and apply it, which is a key thing, and let the spouse know how they get on, what it saved them from, or even what it encouraged them to achieve, which is really important.
Of course, definitely. No, we'll make sure. Thank you. We'll make sure that the link is on the page.
Wonderful.
For the episode on the website. So thank you for sharing that. And other ways of connecting you, obviously, social media channels and your website. We will have all the links in the show notes.
Wonderful.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Seán. It was really, really brilliant, very practical, really useful, and I've certainly learned a lot. And I just want to say thanks again and wish you all the very best with everything that you do.
And thank you. And I know you mean that in a very heartfelt way. And likewise, it always is a pleasure chatting to you, whether it's being recorded or not. It is always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that's our episode for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, you can email me any questions or comments or suggestions at anne@datingcoach.uk. That's anne@datingcoach.uk, or you can reach me on Twitter handle @datingcoach. I would love to hear from you. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for future topics or guests, then please just let me know. So thank you again for being here. I wish you a lovely day wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and I'm sending you so much love, and we'll speak again very soon. Take care.